Coming up on 5 Minute News. Supreme Court endorses more public funding of religious entities. Election workers rebuffed Trump, then faced threats, finds 1-6 panel. And agreement close on basic gun legislation compromise. It's Wednesday, June 22. I'm Anthony Davis. The US Supreme Court further reduced the separation of church and state in a ruling on Tuesday endorsing more public funding of religious entities as its conservative justices sided with two Christian families who challenged a Maine tuition assistance program that excluded private religious schools. In the latest in a series of decisions in recent years expanding religious rights, the justices overturned a lower court ruling that had rejected the family's claims of religious discrimination in violation of the U.S. Constitution, including the First Amendment protection of the free exercise of religion. The court's conservative justices were in the majority in the 6-3 ruling authored by Chief Justice John Roberts, with its liberal members dissenting. The decision built upon the court's 2020 ruling in a Montana case that paved the way for more taxpayer dollars to flow to religious schools. Maine's program provides public funds for tuition at private high schools of a family's choice in sparsely populated areas of the northeastern state lacking public secondary schools. Maine required eligible schools to be non-sectarian, excluding those promoting a particular religion and presenting material through the lens of that faith. The plaintiffs sought taxpayer dollars to send their children to two Christian schools that integrate religion into their classrooms and maintain policies against gay and transgender students and staff. The First Amendment prohibits government endorsement of any particular religion in what is called the Establishment Clause. The Liberal justices said the ruling forces states to fund religious education despite Establishment Clause concerns. The House 1-6 committee heard chilling, tearful testimony on Tuesday that Donald Trump's relentless pressure to overturn the 2020 election provoked widespread threats to the backbone of our democracy. The panel investigating the January 6 attack at the U.S. Capitol focused on Trump's efforts to undo Joe Biden's victory in a most local way, by leaning on officials in key battleground states to reject ballots outright or to submit alternative electors for the final tally in Congress. The pressure, described as potentially illegal, was fueled by the president's false claims of voter fraud, which the panel says led directly to the deadly insurrection at the Capitol. The hearing was punctuated throughout with accounts of the personal attacks faced by state and local officials. Arizona Republican House Speaker Rusty Bowers said he was subjected to a public smear campaign, including relentless bullhorn protests at his home and a pistol-wielding man taunting his family and neighbors. Officials in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and other states told similar stories of having their cell phone numbers and home addresses spread publicly after they refused Trump's demands. At one gripping moment, two Georgia election workers, a mother and daughter, testified they lived in fear of saying their names aloud after Trump wrongly accused them of voter fraud. The committee's vice chair, Republican Liz Cheney, implored Americans to pay attention to the evidence being presented, declaring Donald Trump didn't care about the threats of violence. He did not condemn them. He made no effort to stop them. Senate negotiators have reached agreement on a bipartisan gun violence bill, the party's two top negotiators said on Tuesday, teeing up votes this week on an incremental but notable package that would stand as Congress's response to mass shootings in Texas and New York that shook the nation. 9 days after negotiators agreed to a framework proposal and 29 years after Congress last enacted major firearms curbs, Senator Chris Murphy told reporters that a final accord on the proposal's details had been reached and was in good shape. Moments later, Senator John Cornyn, the chief Republican negotiator, said he, Murphy, and the other two top Senate negotiators had reached agreement. The legislation lawmakers have been working toward would toughen background checks for the youngest firearms buyers, require more sellers to conduct background checks, and beef up penalties on gun traffickers. It also would disperse money to states and communities aimed at improving school safety and mental health initiatives. It lacks the far more potent proposals that President Joe Biden supports and Democrats have pushed for years without success, derailed by GOP opposition. These include banning assault-type weapons or raising the minimum age for buying them, prohibiting high-capacity magazines, and requiring background checks for virtually all gun sales. You can subscribe to 5 Minute News on YouTube with your preferred podcast app. Ask your smart speaker or enable 5 Minute News as your Amazon Alexa flash briefing skill. Subscribe, rate and review online at 5minute.news. 5 Minute News is an Evergreen podcast covering politics, inequality, health and climate, delivering independent, unbiased and essential world news daily.